With the constant threat of nuclear Christmas presents, reports of human rights abuses, mass censorship, and struggles with food security, it's likely that the last thing to pop into your head when you think about North Korea is love. Now, this might come as a shocker to some people, but North Koreans fall in love too. However, the dating culture in North Korea is reportedly markedly different from that of its southern neighbor. But just how different is it really? Let's find out. One thing to keep in mind about North Korea is that despite its far-left ideology, its culture is still deeply rooted in Confucian values. Public displays of affection, such as hugging, kissing, or holding hands, are strongly discouraged. Dating in school is considered a serious offense and can result in expulsion. As a result of this, you're not going to see any skinship between lovers or classmates should you decide to take a stroll through the Hermit Kingdom, even in the more modern areas of Pyongyang. International marriages between North Koreans and foreigners are not known to exist, and interracial marriages within North Korea are strongly discouraged but do exist. Casual sex between unmarried couples is also a huge no-no, though this undoubtedly happens regardless. Due to a lack of access to the internet for the vast majority of the population, online dating probably isn't really a thing. Most North Koreans meet their potential spouses much in the same way your parents did, at work, school, through social places like bars or clubs, or if they're from the same small town, they likely chose a person they've known their whole lives from their neighborhood. A uniquely North Korean way of finding a date is by attending one of the many mass dance ceremonies that periodically occur throughout the country. For many North Koreans, finding a date can often be the easy part. Going on a date can be an entirely different endeavor. Military service, songbun, or their social class, and your career all affect who you can go on a date with, as well as your age, and the entire concept of Western-style dating is still taboo in North Korea, especially among young teenagers. In the book Nothing to Envy: Ordinary Lives in North Korea by Barbara Demick, the first few chapters tell the story of a young 12-year-old North Korean girl who began dating a 15-year-old boy from another town. Her songbun was lower than his, and as a result they could not be seen together or risk destroying his prospects for his future career. The boy could not simply knock on the door and ask to see her for the aforementioned reasons before. To get around this, the boy would have to wait in the cold darkness at night until she could sneak away from her family. They would then silently sneak out of the village to an abandoned sauna, whereupon they could be themselves. According to the girl, who went by the pseudonym Miran, it took them several years to just hold hands, and several more years to kiss. She, along with many other defectors, report that there is no sex education in North Korea, with many girls being unaware of what sex is, much less how to even have it. This leads to problems with teenagers who do manage to figure it out and end up with the young girl becoming pregnant, which can lead to an illegal abortion or risk bringing shame to her family, or even forced marriage to the father, who is a teenager himself. In an article from nknews.org written by Kang Ji-min, tells the story of his various dating experiences. Much like Miran's story, Ji-min states that when you're young, you cannot be seen in public going on a date, so instead he would meet his girlfriend in the park at night. In another article written by Kang Ji-min, he describes watching a South Korean drama with his girlfriend, whereupon the two characters in the drama kissed. Wanting to emulate what he'd seen in the drama, he said, quote, "I held her hands and looked into her eyes. Hyunju closed her eyes. I kissed her on the lips. I don't remember what happened next. My friends had told me numerous times what I should do after kissing a girl, but I couldn't remember." Once again, alluding to North Korean youth's general unfamiliarity with sex. He goes on to say that after your high school days, there's much less restrictions on dating and that it's normal to see couples together out in public, saying that adult dating is not much different than anywhere else in the world. Dates at parks, movie theaters, cafes, and bars are all commonplace. There is one caveat to dating in North Korea that everyone must face at some point, and that is North Korea's mandatory military service, which requires up to 10 years of compulsory service for every male. During this time, it is extremely difficult for men to meet women to date unless they are stationed somewhere close to an urban area with women nearby. For soldiers stationed near the DMZ or in a remote location, dating for a whole decade is almost impossible. However, this does seem to be somewhat alleviated by recent changes which now require females to serve in the military as well, albeit for not as long as men, giving them the opportunity to date their fellow female conscripts. As a result of this, most North Korean men don't get a chance to really date until they are in their late 20s or early 30s. Young North Korean women are also encouraged to date these men as they are seen as more mature and won't eventually have to abandon them for their mandatory service. There is also the incentive for North Korean women to marry young to avoid having to work. The end result of all of this is a wide age gap between North Korean spouses, with men in their late 20s and early 30s marrying women as young as in their late teens and early 20s. This is in stark contrast with South Koreans whose mandatory military service is limited to men and only requires 2 years of service. As a result, South Korean couples typically don't get married until their late 20s. When discussing dating in North Korea, there's also the matter of your parents. I said before that North Korea is still very much a Confucian society. A byproduct of this is that in many cases, parents often choose who their child will marry. They will often do this by consulting with the parents of another child that they are familiar with and set the two up on a blind date. This is called sogeting in South Korea. After the blind date, their respective parents will encourage the two to marry. The children, not wishing to disappoint their parents, the two will agree whether or not they actually like each other. While in some cases the arranged marriage can work out fine, more often than not the two end up simply not being compatible. Although exact figures don't exist, with divorce being all but impossible, unhappiness, infidelity, and domestic violence are said to be all too common among marriages in North Korea. Fortunately enough, however, defector reports seem to indicate that arranged marriages are becoming less and less common as the country slowly but inevitably liberalizes, with most parents allowing their kids to date and marry who they want, provided that they aren't criminals. So, what can we take away from the dating scene in North Korea? Well, I think we can discern that North Koreans, despite having their own quirks and cultural differences, are not drastically different from any other country when it comes to love. With the conservative expectations of chastity until marriage, and the complete lack of knowledge about sexual intercourse being very similar to circumstances to that of a tight-knit Christian community here in the United States. To me, looking at the dating scene in North Korea is a lot like going back in time before we had the internet, back when the only way to find a date was to go out and look for one. Asking a girl to dance or offering to buy her a drink, make her laugh, and better make sure to get her number. Though archaic practices like arranged marriages do exist, they are seemingly on their way out. North Korea is also hardly the only place in the world where arranged marriages still exist. All in all, like most of the world, North Korea is changing with the times, and as people become progressive, so too will the ways in which people find love. I'm Jesse from Chosun Yonghwa Review, and have a great day, and Merry Christmas.